Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. Have to check if my mic's working here. This morning we'll be in Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 1 through 49. In the 7th year, in the 5th month, on the 10th of the month, some of the elders of Israel came to seek the Lord, and they sat down in front of me. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel and tell them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, Are you coming to seek me? As surely as I live, I will not allow you to seek me, declares the sovereign Lord. Are you willing to pronounce judgment? Are you willing to pronounce judgment, Son of man? Then confront them with the abominable practices of their fathers, and say to them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day I chose Israel, I swore to the descendants of the house of Jacob, and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt. I swore to them, I am the Lord your God. On that day I swore to bring them out of the land of Egypt to a land which I had picked out for them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful of all lands. I said to them, Each of you must get rid of the detestable idols you keep before you, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. But they rebelled against me and refused to listen to me. No one got rid of their detestable idols, nor did they abandon the idols of Egypt. Then I decided to pour out my rage on them and fully vent my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. I acted for the sake of my reputation, so that I would not be profaned before the nations among whom they lived, before whom I revealed myself by bringing them out of the land of Egypt. So I brought them out of the land of Egypt and led them to the wilderness. I gave them my statutes and revealed my regulations to them. The one who carries them out will live by them. I also gave them my Sabbaths as a reminder of our relationship, so that they would know that I, the Lord, sanctify them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not follow my statutes, and they rejected my regulations. The one who obeys them will live by them. And they utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I decided to pour out my rage on them in the wilderness and destroy them. I acted for the sake of my reputation, so that I would not be profaned before the nations in whose sight I had brought them out. I also swore to them in the wilderness that I would not bring them to the land I had given them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful of all lands. I did this because they rejected my regulations, did not follow my statutes, and desecrated my Sabbaths, for their hearts followed their idols. Yet I had pity on them and did not destroy them, so I did not make an end to them in the wilderness. But I said to their children in the wilderness, Do not follow the practices of your fathers, do not observe their regulations, nor defile yourselves with their idols. I am the Lord your God. Follow my statutes, observe my regulations, and carry them out. Treat my Sabbaths as holy, and they will be a reminder of our relationship, and then you will know that I am the Lord your God. But the children rebelled against me, did not follow my statutes, did not observe my regulations by carrying them out, the one who obeys them will live by them, and desecrated my Sabbaths. I decided to pour out my rage on them and fully vent my anger against them in the wilderness. But I refrained from doing so and acted instead for the sake of my reputation, so that I would not be profaned before the nations in whose sight I had brought them out. I also swore to them in the wilderness that I would scatter them among the nations and disperse them throughout the lands. I did this because they did not observe my regulations. They rejected my statutes, they desecrated my Sabbaths, and their eyes were fixed on their fathers' idols. I also gave them decrees which were not good, and regulations by which they could not live. I declared them to be defiled because of their sacrifices. They caused all their firstborn to pass through the fire, so that I would devastate them, so that they will know that I am the Lord. Therefore speak to the house of Israel, Son of man, and tell them, This is what the sovereign Lord says. In this way, too, your fathers blasphemed me when they were unfaithful to me. I brought them to the land which I swore to give them, but whenever they saw any high hill or leafy tree, they offered their sacrifices there and presented the offerings that provoke me to anger. They offered their soothing aromas there and poured out their drink offerings. So I said to them, What is this high place you go to? So it is called High Place to this day. Therefore say to the house of Israel, This is what the sovereign Lord says. Will you defile yourselves like your fathers and engage in prostitution with detestable idols? When you present your sacrifices, when you make your sons pass through the fire. You defile yourselves with all your idols to this very day. Will I allow you to seek me, O house of Israel? As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I will not allow you to seek me. What you plan will never happen. You say, we will be like the nations, like the clans of lands, who serve gods of wood and stone. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, with a powerful hand and an outstretched arm, and with outpouring of rage, I will be king over you. I will bring you out from the nations, and will gather you from the lands where you are scattered, with a powerful hand and an outstretched arm, and with an outpouring of rage. I will bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face. Just as I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will enter into judgment with you, declares the sovereign Lord. I will make you pass under the shepherd's staff, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will eliminate from among you the rebels and those who revolt against me. I will bring them out from the land where they have been residing, but they will not come to the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am the Lord. As for you, O house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Each of you go and serve your idols, if you will not listen to me. But my holy name will not be profaned again by your sacrifices and your idols. For there on my holy mountain, the high mountain of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord, all the house of Israel will serve me, all of them in the land. I will accept them there, and there I will seek your contributions and your choice gifts with all your holy things. When I bring you out from the nations and gather you from the lands where you are scattered, I will accept you along with your soothing aroma. I will display my holiness among you in the sight of the nations. Then you will know that I am the Lord, when I bring you to the land of Israel, to the land I swore to give to your fathers. And there you will remember your conduct and all your deeds by which you defiled yourselves. You will despise yourselves because of all the evil deeds you have done. Then you will know that I am the Lord, when I deal with you for the sake of my reputation, and not according to your wicked conduct and corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, turn toward the south, and speak out against the south. Prophesy against the open scrubland of the Negev. And say to the scrubland of the Negev, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, here I am about to start a fire in you, and it will devour every green tree and every dry tree in you. The flaming fire will not be extinguished, and the whole surface of the ground from the Negev to the north will be scorched by it, and everyone will see that I, the Lord, have burned it. It will not be extinguished. Then I said, O sovereign Lord, they are saying of me, does he not simply speak in eloquent figures of speech? That's sad. That's Ezekiel's laying it out pretty plainly here. That how they're acting is not right. How they're living isn't right, and hasn't been right since the beginning of the formation of them as a people until this day. And despite all of that, the conclusion of the chapter is, they are saying of me, does he not simply speak in eloquent figures of speech? That is, that it's just all analogies or things that are hard to understand. But, as Guzik says here, their failure to understand was willful and would be judged. Men find it difficulty in understanding a message which is distasteful to them. It is well known that to the unwilling heart, any message from God appears to be difficult of comprehension. Yeah, it says parables in the NASB, in the King James Version here. But the end result is that they thought it was difficult to understand. But there's nothing difficult to understand about you are doing the wrong thing. Stop doing the wrong thing. Do the right thing and live. If you keep doing the wrong thing, you're going to die. So... Another thing I found interesting in here was 2025. I also gave them decrees which were not good, and regulations by which they could not live. I wonder how they're qualified as not good. Because, I mean, Paul declares that the law served as our tutor, showing us that that essentially we can't live by the law, that righteousness doesn't come through the law. So, in that way, I suppose, judgments by which they could not live make sense. Oh, interesting. I also gave them up to statutes that were not good. That is, since Israel rejected God's law, God allowed them to live under the law of other nations, laws that were not good, and judgments by which they could not live. Okay. Ezekiel was declaring that, in retribution, the Lord allowed them to go after their own ways in order to punish them according to their deeds. The passage is speaking in the sense of a judicial sentence. Disobedience leads to greater sin. Sin becomes its own punishment. God gave them to the customs and consequences of the religions they had chosen. When they had rebelled against the Lord, despised his statutes, and polluted his Sabbaths, in effect, cast him off, and given themselves wholly to their idols, then he abandoned them, and they abandoned themselves to the customs and ordinances of the heathen. Yeah. Israel served and gave honor to the pagan idols in the most unclean and terrible ways, ultimately including child sacrifice. That is, they caused all their firstborn to pass through the fire. These great sins, while in the land, eventually brought the long-withheld judgment of God. Yeah. I think oftentimes when it talks of the judgment here, it's not so much God physically smiting Israel or physically intervening in some manner. It's him removing his hand of protection from us and allowing us to suffer the consequences of our actions. Yeah. So. It's interesting. I think you have a juxtaposition here of in 20 verse 8, they rebelled against me and refused to listen to me. No one got rid of their detestable idols, nor did they abandon the idols of Egypt. Then I decided to pour out my rage on them and fully vent my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. I acted for the sake of my reputation, so that I would not be profaned before the nations among whom they lived, before whom I revealed myself by bringing them out of the land of Egypt. And then again in 2013 and 14, but the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not follow my statutes, and they rejected my regulations. The one who obeys them will live by them. And they utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I decided to pour out my rage on them in the wilderness and destroy them. I acted for the sake of my reputation, so that I would not be profaned before the nations in whose sight I had brought them out. Yeah, just looking. And then there's one more in 2044. Then you will know that I am the Lord, when I deal with you for the sake of my reputation and not according to your wicked conduct and corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. So God acts for the sake of his reputation here 3 times. The first to bring them out of the wilderness, to bring them out of the land of Egypt. The second to slay them in the wilderness, partially. And the third to not hold their sins against them. Yeah. But yeah, I guess the whole of this chapter is talking to these elders who come to Ezekiel for guidance, and demonstrating to them that to this day they haven't followed after the Lord their God and instead have acted corruptly like their fathers before them did. Carrying on, Hebrews chapter 9, verses 11 through 28. But now Christ has come as the high priest of the good things to come. He passed through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. And he entered once for all into the most holy place, not by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, and so he himself secured eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a young cow sprinkled on those who are defiled consecrated them and provided ritual purity, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purifying our consciences from dead works to worship the living God? And so he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the eternal inheritance he has promised, since he died to set them free from the violations committed under the first covenant. For where there is a will, the death of the one who made it must be proven. For a will takes effect only at death, since it carries no force, while the one who made it is alive. So even the first covenant was inaugurated with blood. For when Moses had spoken every command to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, and said, This is the blood of the covenant that God has commanded you to keep. And both the tabernacle and all the utensils of worship he likewise sprinkled with blood. Indeed, according to the law, almost everything was purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness. So it was necessary for the sketches of the things in heaven to be purified with these sacrifices. But the heavenly things themselves required better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with hands, the representation of the true sanctuary, but into heaven itself, and he appears now in God's presence for us. And he did not enter to offer himself again and again, the way the high priests enter the sanctuary, year after year, with blood that is not his own. For then he would have had to suffer again and again since the foundation of the world. But now he has appeared once for all, at the consummation of the ages, to put away sin by his sacrifice. And just as people are appointed to die once and then to face judgment, so also after Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many, to those who eagerly await him he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation. It's interesting. When I read Hebrews 9:14, I was struck by the work of the Trinity within the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross. How much more will the blood of Christ, who, through the eternal Spirit, offered himself without blemish to God, purifying our consciences from dead works to worship the living God? That is, you have the Father, the Son, and the Spirit all present in the act of purification here. Yeah. And you have Jesus Christ as the mediator of this new covenant, which he purifies, dedicates as holy to God these spiritual realities, this sanctuary in heaven. For Christ did not enter a sanctuary made with hands, in Hebrews 9:24, the representation of the true sanctuary, but into heaven itself, and he appears now in God's presence for us. And dedicates the instruments of his priestly office with the sacrifice of his own self, his blood spilled on the cross, which, contrary to the blood of bulls and goats, which was used year after year for purification in the first covenant, Christ offers his blood for the purification and redemption of our souls once. So, carrying on, Psalm 107, verses 1 through 43. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his loyal love endures. Let those delivered by the Lord speak out, those whom he delivered from the power of the enemy, and gathered from foreign lands, from east and west, from north and south. They wandered through the wilderness on a desert road. They found no city in which to live. They were hungry and thirsty. They fainted from exhaustion. They cried out to the Lord in their distress. He delivered them from their troubles. He led them on a level road, that they might find a city in which to live. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loyal love, and for the amazing things he has done for people. For he has satisfied those who thirst, and those who hunger he has filled with food. They sat in utter darkness, bound in powerful iron chains, because they had rebelled against God's command and rejected the instructions of the sovereign king. So he used suffering to humble them. They stumbled, and no one helped them. They cried out to the Lord in their distress. He delivered them from their troubles. He brought them out of the utter darkness and tore off their shackles. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loyal love and for the amazing things he has done for people. For he shattered the bronze gates and hacked through the iron bars. They acted like fools in their rebellious ways and suffered because of their sins. They lost their appetite for all food, and they drew near the gates of death. They cried out to the Lord in their distress. He delivered them from their troubles. He sent them an assuring word and healed them. He rescued them from the pits where they were trapped. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loyal love and for the amazing things he has done for people. Let them present thank offerings and loudly proclaim what he has done. Some traveled on the sea in ships and carried cargo over the vast waters. They witnessed the acts of the Lord, his amazing feats on the deep water. He gave the order for a windstorm, and it stirred up the waves of the sea. They reached up to the sky, then dropped into the depths. The sailors' strength left them because the danger was so great. They swayed and staggered like a drunk, and all their skill proved ineffective. They cried out to the Lord in their distress. He delivered them from their troubles. He calmed the storm, and the waves grew silent. The sailors rejoiced because the waves grew quiet, and he led them to the harbor they desired. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his loyal love and for the amazing things he has done for people. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people. Let them praise him in the places where the leaders preside. He turned streams into a desert, springs of water into arid land, and a fruitful land into a barren place, because of the sin of its inhabitants. As for his people, he turned a desert into a pool of water, and a dry land into springs of water. He allowed the hungry to settle there, and they established a city in which to live. They cultivated fields and planted vineyards, which yielded a harvest of fruit. He blessed them so that they became very numerous. He would not allow their cattle to decrease in number. As for their enemies, they decreased in number and were beaten down because of painful distress and suffering. He would pour contempt upon princes, and he made them wander in a wasteland with no road. Yet he protected the needy from oppression and cared for his families like a flock of sheep. When the godly see this, they rejoice, and every sinner shuts his mouth. Whoever is wise, let him take note of these things. Let them consider the Lord's acts of loyal love. And finally, Proverbs chapter 27, verse 11. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, so that I may answer anyone who taunts me. Yeah. The author of the Proverbs is admonishing his son not to act foolishly, so that when he's challenged by a mocker. He doesn't have a foolish son to add to to give evidence to the mocker. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. Hope you have a great day.